the more you spent time with your Game Boy Advance, the more you realize it's actually very capable. And as the years went by, developers started squeezing out every power out of it. And did you know that run and gun games in particular had become the ultimate stress test for this hardware? Now, today I have 12 titles that push the GBA to its absolute breaking point. Let's get to it. Gunstar Superheroes, 2005. If you want to see the GBA performing actual miracles, look no further than Gunstar Superheroes. Developed by Treasure, this is a technical showcase that shouldn't exist. By 2005, the DS was already out, but Treasure wanted to give the GBA one final masterpiece. I remember the first time I saw the 7-Force boss fight on this handheld. For those who don't know, 7-Force is a recurring boss that transforms into 7 different mechanical forms. On the GBA, this was a nightmare to program because the system lacks a dedicated 3D chip, yet they utilized a variety of pseudo 3D effects and sprite rotations that the GBA wasn't technically supposed to be able to do. Unlike the original Gunstar Heroes on Genesis, where you combined weapons, here you have 3 distinct styles: a rapid fire shot, a powerful short-range spread, and a homing shot. You can cycle through these instantly, which is necessary because the game throws a lot of projectiles at you. Yeah, a lot. Every time a massive explosion fills the screen, I'm still shocked the GBA doesn't just melt in my hands. Metal Slug Advance, 2004. The Metal Slug series is the gold standard for 2D run-and-gun animation. On the Neo Geo arcade hardware, the backgrounds were hand-painted, and the gore was hilariously over the top. When SNK announced an original title for the GBA, I was kinda skeptical. How could a handheld with a fraction of the Neo Geo's memory handle that level of detail? Somehow, SNK Playmore pulled it off, and it was a legitimate entry in the series. The first thing you notice is the color palette. The GBA screen was notoriously dark in the early model, so makers had to brighten their art. In the arcades, Metal Slug is a one-hit kill quarter eater. On the GBA, they gave you a life bar and transformed your game from a survival horror into a strategic run-and-gun. Contra Advance, The Alien Wars X, 2002. Contra-free, The Alien Wars is often called the pinnacle of the series. When Konami brought it to the GBA as Contra Advance, they faced a significant hurdle. The SNES version had overhead levels where the entire ground rotated beneath the player. The GBA, while capable of some rotation, struggled to replicate those specific SNES effects perfectly. Konami's solution? They ripped out the overhead levels entirely and replaced them with levels from Contra Hard Crops on the Sega Genesis. To me, this was a massive win. The technical feat here is the sheer speed. Contra Advance runs fast, sometimes faster than the hardware feels like it can handle. When you're hanging from rails while a giant robotic skeleton tears the scenery apart in Stage 1, the GBA is processing hundreds of points of interaction per second. The dual weapon switching from the SNES version is removed, and yeah, it sounds like a downgrade, but it forces you to play more aggressively with what you have. It's Contra hard in every sense of the word. Alien Hominid, 2006. I'm gonna call this a literal case study in porting. Alien Hominid started as a Flash game on Newgrounds before moving to the PS2 and GameCube. By the time it hit the GBA in 2006, the console was practically at the end of its life. The art style is what gets me every time. It looks like a living cartoon. Most GBA games used pixel art that was locked to a grid. Alien Hominid used a hand-drawn aesthetic. The gameplay is pure chaos. You're constantly jumping, biting heads off, and tossing grenades, and the screen is packed with tanks and helicopters. The fact that the GBA handles this without becoming a flickering mess is peak engineering. And I should mention, you will love the blood effects. When you blast an agent, they explode into red droplets. It's graphic, is what I'm saying. CT Special Forces, Back to Hell, 2003. The CT Special Forces series is unfairly dismissed, but that's a huge mistake. This series, and Back to Hell specifically, represent some of the most polished European development on the GBA. If you say that Metal Slug is about over-the-top fantasy warfare, then CT Special Forces is grounded with a more tactical vibe. The technical brilliance here lies in the environmental detail. Snowy mountains and dense jungles? You get it all. Now, try to understand this. Parallax scrolling is a technique where background layers move at different speeds than the foreground to create an illusion of 3D depth. Now, our game Back to Hell uses up to 4 layers of parallax in some stages, which is the maximum the GBA hardware can handle comfortably. They really tested the limits with this one, huh? 1 minute you're in a traditional side-scrolling shootout, and the next, a skydiving minigame. And these transitions are smooth like butter. Turok Evolution, 2002. When Turok Evolution was released for home consoles, it was a 3D first-person shooter. For the GBA, it was made into a 2D side-scrolling run-and-gun. They used the same technique made famous by Donkey Kong Country to create the bosses. When a T-Rex enters the frame, the game doesn't stutter. The environments are impressive, with jungles and ancient ruins. In many run-and-guns, you feel like you're shooting peas. In Turok, the screen shakes. The sound of the shotgun is deafening, and the enemies react with good enough death animations. These little things are why I love this game so much. Marvel's The Invincible Iron Man, 2002. Licensed superhero games on handhelds are usually, well, they're usually terrible, but The Invincible Iron Man is an exception for me. As Iron Man flies through stuff, his jet boots emit a glow that affects the surrounding environment. Even modern games don't have such nice surrounding physics. Needless to say, this kind of dynamic lighting was extremely rare on the GBA. The gameplay is a mix of traditional shooting and flight-based combat, and the Game Boy handles this transition between those two modes effortlessly. I always loved how heavy Iron Man felt. Like, when you land from a high jump, the screen shakes and dust kicks up. Medal of Honor, Infiltrator, 2003. This is maybe the most unique game on this list. You and I know that normally run-and-guns are side-scrollers, but Medal of Honor Infiltrator has a top-down perspective. Even with this uniqueness or absurdity, whatever you want to call it, it has a certain flair. There are 2 types of mission, infiltration and assault. During the assault missions, your console is working over time. You have dozens of enemy soldiers on screen, landmines exploding, tanks rolling through destructible walls, and airstrikes coming in from off-screen. Too much to handle, even for your eyes. All things aside, the sound graphics have all my attention. They are unexpectedly good. Dead to Rights, 2004. Dead to Rights has Max Payne-inspired violence. Now, imagine bringing all that to a 32-bit handheld console. Yet the GBA version is cool. To make the game work, we were given a 2.5D view that gives the illusion of a 3D world. Watching Jack Slate dive through the air in slow motion while unloading 2 pistols in a group of thugs is just so satisfying. It doesn't stop there, because you also have your dog, Shadow, who can be sent out to disarm enemies or fetch items. A real good boy. Although released more than 2 decades ago, the AI for this game is very impressive. If you ask me to describe Dead to Rights in one word, then that would be mature. James Bond 007, Everything or Nothing, 2004. Similar to Dead Rights, this James Bond game uses an isometric view. Where Dead to Rights focused on raw violence, Everything or Nothing focuses on environmental interaction. Once again, the AI behaves extremely well. In most handheld shooters of this era, enemies just stand there and shoot. But here, enemies will take cover behind crates and retreat when they're low on health. Especially there are high-quality pre-rendered environments, and dude, even the floors have reflections. I bet your device got heated up pretty bad while you played this one. I was impressed by how much content they packed into a single cartridge because, let's be real, it's a long game with a lot of variety, and yet there's no compromise in quality. Scourge Hive 2006. Scourge Hive is a bit of a hidden gem. It's like a cross between Metroid and Crusader, no remorse. You play as Genosa Arma, a bounty hunter fighting an alien parasite called the Scourge. The world is literally being taken over by a purple alien mass, and our Game Boy renders this with beautiful colors. The use of transparency effects is such an eye candy after knowing that the GBA has limited hardware support for transparency, but Scourge Hive uses it everywhere. Yes, everywhere. The game is fast, very fast. I also have to mention the map system. It's a complex and interconnected world with nearly zero load time. Kudos to the Game Boy. Mega Man 03, 2004. The Mega Man Zero series is legendary among GBA owners, and for good reason. These were built from the ground up to take advantage of every single feature the GBA offered. By the time they reached 03, they had mastered the hardware. And don't get me started on the animation. Every slash of the Z-Saber, every frame of his hair blowing in the wind, and every dash jump is perfectly animated. The cyberspace levels are where the hardware is pushed. When you enter cyberspace, the background changes into a digital grid with various scrolling effects. Mega Man 03 is not for those who get easily irritated, because the gameplay is difficult. And yet, it's a game where you feel completely in control of a high-speed engine of destruction. It is, in my opinion, the best-looking and best-playing 2D action game on the platform. Marvelous Verdict. The Game Boy Advance era was a special time. It was the last great stand for dedicated 2D hardware, and the 12 games I mentioned prove that being portable does not mean that anything would be compromised. I mean, I'm still blown away by what they achieved with such limited resources. Which one of these is your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and I will see you on the next video.